there's things you can control like that, the time and place of your presentation. I'm going to kind of meander a little bit here and do some reading, but I'll look up and talk to you and offer some more candid pieces, and then when we're done, I'd love to hear some questions. I'm going to cover a lot of interesting stuff, so if I go on one route, I will backtrack and revisit things. I talked about that one squandered presentation. Just for fun, there was another for McDonald's where, and this was back in the days of jingles and things like that, and the other team, it was two gals, and they came out and they were dressed as French fries to deliver this thing about McDonald's famous product, French fries. I would argue that they lost a certain amount of decorum by doing that, style points were not giving them their, however they got an A for effort. Different ways to manage what kind of person you are, what your comfort zone is, all that stuff you're going to learn, and I encourage you to think about it and not disrespect it as that's not what's important. It is important. If that audience was appreciative of these women putting on French fry costumes and singing live in front of them, and they sold it, they're going to sell that idea, circumstance. And then it leaves a guy like me just with words, and you know, I went and beat those fries. I was listening to some tapes the other day when I was running on my and I had some old Led Zeppelin, and they have a live album, How the West Was Won. It's totally awesome. If you've never experienced that band, get that tape, How the West Was Won. The Immigrant Song is typically how Led Zeppelin opened their show, but it's not how they started their show. Came the anticipatory drone of all these speakers against them, and you could hear it. It's called El Drone on the CD track, and there's 20 seconds of and you're transported to that concert. You almost see the blue haze of pot smoke and see the band walking and the red lights on the Fender, boop, 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 and Jimmy Page. And it's just intense, and you can feel the energy. It's palpable. Wouldn't you love, I mean, just love to get that kind of reaction as you're walking up to the stage. You need to kind of feel it like that, because if you've got that mojo going on, you're going to rock the house the same way Led Zeppelin did when they kick into Immigrant Song. The crowd's already nuts. They had them at Hello. And boy, if you've got a presentation and you've got a campaign and you feel it the way they feel about the Immigrant Song, or when Guns N' Roses is introduced, the very best introduction I've ever heard, the guy says, "You wanted the best? Well, they didn't fucking make it. So here's who you get from Hollywood, Guns!" And so this rebellious anti-band, this band that just changed the game and put everything in hair, rock, all went away for a couple years. It was all about balls to the wall heavy metal. And that setup to get them out there is why it worked so well for them. So what's your setup? How's it going to work for you? Plan that stuff. Have some fun with it. I got to tell you, coming up with ideas and selling ideas, they're just the same amount of fun for me now. Getting up for a presentation, fear and anxiety, analyst, tell you tips how to do it, instead of being scared stiff, like shaky and sweaty and trembly. There's a way to diminish that and get rid of it so you become an emotionally honest, caring and compassionate for what you're talking about. I want you to learn to embrace this palpable buzz, that drone, that imaginary anticipatory drone. Feed off the in the room. It's a great thing. Let yourself get excited. I mean, what is the downside? You look like you're enthusiastic, you're passionate. Dangerous not to be psyched. That's kind of obvious, but it needs to be said. You and is not a, or someone else will do it, like the account guy, because that's how you'll come across. You'll come across like you're phoning it in. Most presentations are a big deal. You know, think about it. You're either in front of a client, your boss, or both of them. And chances are, on top of all that, it's a competition of sorts. You will compete against her, against him, and against her, all in the same company, competing eventually gets. Yes, it's a team sport. Yes, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But the more times you're the one who wins, the more it wins. I mean, it's just, that's America. That's how it works. It's a meritocracy. There's no president. There's no way to spread the wealth. You either are the guy that's winning, or you're the one that tends to be losing. And even in good times, you're going to be diminished. That's your profile. There's another popular myth, and I would bet most of you think and still feel this way. We learned it as early as the first grade, doing book reports and show and tell and stuff like that. It's the one that states that reading from your presentation is bad. Instead, we're always encouraged to recite our material by heart, or risk sounding dumb, right? Don't you remember? If you're reading, you know, so you're always, you get this a lot, you know, and you feed lines. That's insanity. Memorizing stuff is not a sign of intelligence or respect. If anything, it tells your audience that you spent more time committing your thoughts to memory than actually coming up with them. We burn valuable fuel on something so cosmetic. I'm asking why. Unless you're reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, why worry about that stuff? Use your memory for anniversaries, not speeches. Recite poems, not presentations. It's okay to read. For those of you copywriters, I like to say to my audience when I'm presenting, forgive me, I'm a copywriter by trade, so I'm going to refer to this text. I spent a lot of time on it, and I don't want to get it wrong. Every client appreciates that. They're like, that makes sense. I get that. Of course you'd want to refer. I mean, he's a writer. He wrote the words. He doesn't want to get them wrong. To sit there at home memorizing your script so that you sort of have some kind of choreographed je ne sais quoi, I think is wasted calories. Once in a while, it's awesome and appropriate, but in general, you don't have to do it. I'm reading from here now. I can look up at you, and I can look back, and since you already know I'm going to do it, because I said I'm going to do it, there's no awkwardness to it, at least not for me. I'm getting more comfortable even as I own up to it. And I'm going to talk about that because that's a really cool way to get feeling good in front of people. What I'm talking about here, part of me will always believe cannot be taught. I think a rigid automaton will always be a slave to his PowerPoint. You can no more pull a stick out of his butt than you can tell someone who's clinically depressed to lighten up. I mean, if someone's clinically depressed and you're like, can't you just be happy? It just doesn't work that way. And you can't tell someone who's that guy, you know, with the little minutia, he'll never come around. So that's what it is. And all will not be able to loosen up a frightened art director, require nerves of a tongue-tied. Mechanical cannot be fixed with oil. However, these presentation skills can be improved upon. For me, it was a matter of self-preservation. I got my first lesson in the Chicago public school system, not in the classroom, but in a schoolyard. I had to learn how to talk my way out of countless ass whoopings, and I'm not kidding. Bereft physical prowess, I was kind of the little sort of nerdy kid. I relied upon wits. If and when a bully approached me with intent to do bodily harm, I'm talking about gangbangers. I grew up in Lakeview, the Latin Kings, the Latin Eagles. They had turf wars, and I was this little white kid kind of caught in between it, and it was tough. It was tough, but I had to figure out how to deal with it. I had to talk my way out of getting my butt kicked. It was easier to say something than to do something. I couldn't fight, but I could talk, and I could use words. I could present myself in a way that would get me out of said ass whipping. And you learn how to do it, and you better learn how to do it, frankly.